So the Intelligence Committee's memo has been finally released last Friday, and even before the dust settled, it seems like there are more memos to come. And anybody who's paying close attention to this has to have some kind of thoughts. And we should also pay close attention to California politics. The California politics have been rocked by sexual harassment. And last Friday, California legislature released decades worth of records on sexual harassment cases. And finally, Philadelphia Eagles, your team, has won its first Vince Lombardi trophy at Super Bowl 52. Is this the beginning of the end of the New England dynasty? And did Justin Timberlake deliver at the halftime show? Hi, I'm Michael Wan, your host for Michael Wan's Op-Ed Live. And this is Ben Pack, who is running for the California Board of Equalization seat. The election will be held on June 5th, and we want to make sure our eligible voters all come out and vote that day. So Ben, let's start with our first topic for today. The controversial memo has finally came out last Friday. The memo did reveal about surveillance on the Trump campaign. President Trump said that the top people at the FBI and the Justice Department ought to be ashamed of themselves. And on Monday, Trump doubled down on his contention that this memo exposed deep political bias at the highest level of law enforcement. Ben, what is your take on this?
Yeah, the memo did come out.
Yeah.
I think the president, the words that he used, I believe is taking a dangerous precedence, because attacking law enforcement, the DOJ, just in general like that, I think is very dangerous. Mm-hmm. I still strongly believe that this is a personal vendetta and ploy that Trump is using in order to divert the attention on the probe that is going on against him and the whole Russian collusion. So, you know, I, as a member of the law enforcement family, I found it to be very incendiary, and then to just very irresponsible for him to say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the whole thing is true. There is base, you know, the whole thing, the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation, I think was based pretty much on this too. If you look at it, you know, here's a memo, right? The 4-page memo. And if you look at it here, it says, the FBI and DOJ obtained one initial FISA warrant targeting Carter Page. So Carter Page was a volunteer for the Trump campaign, and 3 FISA renewals from the FISC. So how did they get this warrant, Ben? You know, the way they approached it was very evil, I think. You know, because the Trump the way they approached it was they made this fake dossier. You know, they paid the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton campaign. They paid $12 million for this fake dossier. They hired who? Fusion GPS, the operation research team, right? Research firm, and they hired Christopher Steele, who was an MI6 agent in Great Britain, and he got into contact with 3 Russians, and that's how they came up with this, you know, complete, you know, what do you call that? P-gate, P-gate, P-gate X-file, whatever you want to call it, you know, and they claim that Trump did all these kind of crazy sex acts in a Moscow hotel. They got this warrant by that fake, you know, narrative. And they also claim here, you know, if you see on the second page here, it says Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff, right?
Not Michael Wan?
No, it's not me. Which focuses on Page's July 2016 trip to Moscow, right? And the article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself to Yahoo News. So they got this FISA warrant that, you know, to the FISA court. And they said that, you know, it was on Yahoo News, so we need to, you know, pretty much wiretap this guy. But the source of that for this article was who? Christopher Steele, that MI6 agent. So it was a circular reporting. You know, he was the one who fed this report to this dossier. I mean, to Yahoo News, and they reported it, and FBI used that. But the source was pretty much the same. It was the same guy. It wasn't like other information, like, you know, it wasn't like the Yahoo News found other sources to support this claim. It was, they were using the same guy, you know, so it doesn't make sense. And then Christopher Steele also met with NYT, New York Times, Washington Post, and all these mainstream media outlets. So it does, the way they got this doesn't make sense. And also, there was another report that came out yesterday, and it said that it was actually Obama and Hillary people who fed Christopher Steele with these information. You read about that too?
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that you know so much about this is, I give you credit. I give you credit. At the same time, this is all, a lot of it is omitted, redacted. They kind of went through it again. I think you're segmenting it too much. You have to read the whole thing and then kind of look at it as a whole. I totally disagree with you in terms of you're reading it too much into it as a whole. To me, it really doesn't say anything, doesn't say much. Okay,
Yeah,
how they obtain all that is something that they really haven't disclosed. And then what's in it, to me, really doesn't say much. What I think is dangerous, though, is the fact that although they, even Senator McCain came out and said that this is dangerous.
Senator McCain,
yeah,
I don't even see him as a Republican. To be honest with you, I'm
either
an
way,
independent. I think John McCain is probably, I think it's time for him to go. I think his time is up. What he's doing is completely nonsense. I meet a lot of Republicans and I meet with a lot of conservative people, and they tell me they can't stand him, all the things that he stands for. I think John McCain lost it. In my opinion, I think he completely lost it. He should get out of the Senate. I mean, that's how I see it. That's why every single corner, he always agrees with the Democrats. So I know that John McCain is who Democrats love and the mainstream media love. I know. I mean, he's their favorite guy. They love him because he also pretty much never criticized after he lost, which I give him credit for back in 2008 to President Obama at that time. But other than that, I respect his service for military. His service in the military. I respect him for that. He's a patriot. No matter what everybody says about him, he's a patriot. I agree with you on that. But other than that, as a politician, I think he's horrible right now.
Well, the way I see it is that he has the courage to kind of say the things that he needs to say. Okay, if you kind of look at it as a whole, very few people are paying attention to this whole, and I think you call it. What do you call it?
I disagree.
No, I like what you use. The MemogateㆍCA.
Yeah, so
that's fine. Disagreement, or right now we have two points of view. My point of view is that this is absolutely gonna go nowhere. I think this is just a ploy they're using to divert the attention from where it's supposed to be, to discredit the law enforcement community. And once this whole thing transpires, because now they are looking into releasing the Democratic memo refuting this, and we're going to have to see the committee, everybody agreed to release it, but it's going to be up to the president. So if the president, let's say, does release it, then you'll give sort of 2 points of view. If he decides not to, then you'll validate my point of view that he's using this in order to divert the attention from the investigation going on.
Okay, Ben, and I know, I respect you, you're in the law enforcement, and our viewers, I want them to know that I'm not in any way, putting them down. I respect the rank and file. They are the, the utmost greatest people in America, I really believe that. But I'm talking about the top level people, the people who are on the 7th floor of the FBI building. I'm talking about Andrew McKay, the deputy director for FBI. I'm talking about James Comey, former FBI director. These are all corrupt human beings. I really believe they are. They rigged the whole election in favor of Hillary Clinton. That's what this whole thing is about. I mean, imagine what if George W. Bush and John McCain did this whole thing? What if John McCain campaign came up with this kind of dossier and they wiretapped an Obama campaign person? Would the mainstream media will be still quiet like this? I know why they're quiet about this and why they're not talking about it. Because they don't want to. Because the mainstream media and the Democratic Party are one and the same. I really believe that they are a PR team for the Democratic Party. They just happen to be that way. And recently it has been just an insane level. They are, if you look at their talking points, it's exactly the same. The New York Times, Washington Post, look at their editorial page. There is no difference between their editorial page and what the Democratic Party right now, the National Democratic Party, is agenda. They are exactly one and the same, if you look at it.
Well, if your claim were to be valid, were they wiretap Obama, obviously they didn't find anything because he still became the president
but can you
of the United States.
Can you imagine the uproar would be? How it would be? Because it's Donald Trump. Because they all hate it. ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post. They all hate Donald Trump. That's why they just try to say this is a nothing burger.
This is what the release of the memo is creating, meaning people think
dividing?
there is a conspiracy. There is this thing that at the highest level, they're doing things that the American people doesn't know. I really welcome the release of the Democratic Party to kind of give a different point of view. And, you know, there is always three sides to a story, yours, mine, and what really happened. I think this is going to be a case where once they release it, we'll be able to kind of compare both and then be able to see exactly and then make our own judgment. At this point, I think the president of the United States should not be saying the things that he's saying because it is coming very, very from a personal point of view, and then he's using this. So, yes, when you read this, but at the same time, a lot of it is redacted, a lot of it is omitted. Therefore, it makes it sound as there is sort of that people were just trying to make Trump look bad. So, you know.
So the intelligence committee, they're going to come out with their the Democratic, Adam Schiff,
yes.
our friend, our pal. Adam Schiff is going to come out with his own version of 10-page Democratic memo, the intelligence memo, which is going to be probably based on facts. And they unanimously voted for it, right, to be released.
To be released.
And President Trump has up to 5 days, same thing, up to 5 days to release to the public or not. Let's see what that goes, where that goes. But, you know, I really think this is corrupt to the core because when you say like, like Bruce Orr, a senior DOJ official who worked closely with Deputy Attorney General Yates and later Rosenstein, here it says Steele, you know, Christopher Steele,
yes,
the guy, the troublemaker. I see him as the biggest troublemaker ever. He said, so Christopher Steele, this is what Bruce Orr said. You know, Bruce Orr, for our viewers, he's a number 4 guy in the AG department, okay? And so Steele said, now this is what Bruce Orr, you know, told to the AG. Steele was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. I'll repeat this. He was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. So if you have
I agree with him, though.
If you have I know that, because we've been talking about him, what like 2-3 years? But okay, so you have this guy who hates Donald Trump to the core, right? He's like anti-Trump as you can get. And you have the Democratic campaign and also Hillary campaign giving him $12 million. And he puts up with it. He brings up this nonsense. I don't know, probably these Russian people said these kind of stuff. That's why he got it. And there's reports, like I just told you earlier, that it was Hillary and Obama's people who fed him information about this. Then this means that the Attorney General's office and FBI, they tried to rig the system. You know, this is the only way that I can analyze this. You know, Ben, I've been watching politics ever since closely. Since 90s, you know, and I was a Bill Clinton supporter, you know, and I was a George W. Bush supporter. I was a Barack Obama supporter back in 2008 and 2012. But this shouldn't happen. I mean, this is crazy stuff, you know. And I think the mainstream media ought to be ashamed of themselves. I really believe that they should cover this like it's Watergate times 100 with steroids on it. I really believe that. This is just crazy. I don't think it's going to die out. There's going to be more memos to come. You know that, right? And there's going to be the Democratic Party Intelligence Committee's memo that's going to come out. It's a 10-page memo, right? And then there's going to be memos about the State Department being involved. The State Department, that's crazier. Do you know Hillary Clinton campaign? The Clinton Foundation got $145 million from a Russian businessman. And in return, Hillary, she was Secretary of State at that time. She gave 20% of American uranium to Russia. Isn't that more Russia? I think the Russia scandal is true, but it's not on Donald Trump's side. It's on Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama side. And I think these things are all going to unravel and come out there. And the mainstream media probably that day will have to cover this story.
If that is the case, then one of the things that we enjoy in the United States is freedom of press. And I do believe some are very conservative, some are very liberal. In this particular case with this, I'm going to use your words, MemoGate, is that even some of the congressional people probably don't understand what's going on. This is something that I think in an essence is boring. It's very difficult to read, it's very difficult to understand, and then the average individual, even who is interested in politics, don't really care too much about this because at the end of the day, there's no repercussion.
I mean, there is a point that you are raising that the content could be a little bit complicated. You're right. It's not like something that's easy to, digest. But once you get to know the facts one by one, this is I think, I've been interested in Washington politics for a very long time. This is the most corrupt case that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I would say this. This kind of thing, I could never imagine that this kind of thing could happen.
And then this is what the memo is doing. Because remember, there is hundreds, if not thousands, if not memos that are going back and forth that is all classified. So we have no access whatsoever to it. So I don't know what those contain. The release of this is creating that kind of divisiveness and then people to kind of concentrate on that, so it takes away from what's really the big picture.
Because my take is this. Okay, let's say Carter Page is an agent. They let him go. They fired him. The Trump campaign fired him, June of 2015, I think, right after there has been some reports about him being close with Russians and all that. Then what has Trump got to do with it? That's my question. That's what I want to ask, Special Counsel Robert Mueller. What has Trump got to do with it then if it's just, Carter Page?
It would be interesting if you could have him on your show and then ask him directly.
Okay, but anyway, you think that it's going to turn out to be nothing. I think it's going to turn out to be a huge thing.
Okay, we'll see. But my consensus, and at least what I feel about it, is just going to blow over.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Yes.
And let's jump to our next subject. I would think you know a lot about this going on in California state capitol since you were an insider. And I'll read the LA Times article first. 18 alleged cases of sexual harassment, including sharing of pornographic photos and a staff member accused of grabbing a woman's buttocks and genitals, were publicly disclosed by the California legislature on Friday, detailed through investigation records that had been shielded in some cases for more than a decade. 4 incumbent lawmakers are named in those completed investigations: Assemblyman Travis Allen and State Senators Bob Hertzberg and Tony Mendoza, and Assemblywoman Autumn Burke. A 5th completed case named former Assemblyman Raul Bocanegra, who resigned last year after facing allegations of harassment by multiple women. I can go on, but I'll stop here. Your thoughts on this whole mess, and you've been hearing a lot about this situation last year, and I think our viewers, probably some of them don't know that this thing has been going on. Can you tell us more about it?
I am glad that they're releasing that kind of documents. I am glad that women and men are having the courage to come forward, and also some people to acknowledge, as well as the leadership to help kind of expose this behavior that should not be going on. Especially, in all levels shouldn't be going on, but people that we elect to be leaders should be the last person to actually engage in this kind of behavior. I welcome it, and I think if they did some wrongdoing, whether it was a long time ago or current, they should be accountable for it.
Do you think they should all be fired or let go, or do you think it should be, like America's legal system is innocence till proven guilty? Right?
Absolutely.
Or should they be able to, But it seems like these days, once you're accused, they're out. What do you think about that?
Well, if that was the case, then the President of the United States should have been out with 16 women and then some people coming forward. So I guess it all depends who you are.
How about Bill Clinton?
It all depends who you are. I think the process has to be delineated where people have to be punished if they did some wrongdoing. Going back certain years, I don't know the implications of the statute of limitation. Maybe it doesn't apply as well. But it's not a behavior that can be... It shouldn't be going on anymore, and then it should have never happened. But I think politics in general has been very male-dominated, and I think
a lot in California, right?
I think anywhere you see, and I'm glad that that is changing from somebody who only has daughters and are very respectful of women. But I think that we have to enable people, and we have to listen. because a lot of times I think it was just dismissed as like, you know, I cannot believe that is happening. It's like, not that person, but I think you have to listen.
Exactly.
At the same time, I do have to say there's a danger if you just kind of listen to openly too much, because then there will be people who will take advantage of it and then trying to see this opportunity as a money-making opportunity and then make allegations, because when you're listening to everybody and then, but I think it needs to be vetted properly.
So you're talking about like false accusations. We're
Yes.
careful about.
Yes.
Do you think those things do happen too? You know, in California state legislature. Or?
You made a good point. You know, innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
I think investigations have to be done, although it may be time-consuming, and then you know, financially as well, it may be a little bit prohibitive. But I think when there is some valid allegations, you do have to look into it. I'm glad that some of the leadership is taking responsibility to kind of sort of get rid of this behavior. I think California, if I'm not mistaken, is the only one that actually everybody is behind it, and then they actually came out to support these measures, right? So once again, California, we take the leadership on a lot of the things that we do nationwide, and I think this is a good time where it proves that they are taking the forefront of it.
Your former boss, Kevin DeLeon, had a lot to say about what's going on right now. What did he say about this whole situation?
You know, as the pro tem, I think
Senate pro tem Kevin
yes,
DeLeon.
And pro tem basically means the president of the Senate.
Yes, yes.
One of the allegations that was made was against his former roommate, Tony Mendoza.
Tony Mendoza. They're pretty buddies, right?
Well, I don't know about buddies because I never pried on his personal sort of affairs. But the fact is that they were sharing residence in Sacramento. And but even being the roommate, you know, he took swift action in order to make sure that there's an investigation being done against Senator Mendoza, and then it's ongoing, and we're going to see the sort of results of it when it's concluded. I believe he's done a good job in terms of being vocal about it, but it's not just Senator De Leon who needs to take leadership. I think the governor, as well as the Speaker of the House, the caucuses, who are all involved, and everybody should be speaking, because this whole thing kind of opened up or came into fruition from Hollywood. And Hollywood is another very powerful group of people, and politicians are another very strong group of people. And I think now that this is sort of out in the open, is going to change the workplace. It's going to change people's behavior. And I think people are going to be a lot careful. Some of the allegations that were made on that, or the documents, the people thought they were just having a regular conversation. And you know, I wasn't there to know, but at the same time, if you and I off camera were talking about something, and then I said something wrong, I would expect for you to come and say, Ben, you know, what you're talking about, I did not like. And then I can change it. If it continues, then I think you can escalate it. But at the same time, people should be given an opportunity to know that their behavior is wrong, and then not find out like 20 years down the road that what you said in a sort of like a just like normal conversation, it comes out, and then you don't even remember it happened.
Exactly. So and I also read that part. I think it was from the Times article that there's a hugger. You know, the state. Is he assembly? He's just known to be a hugger. You know, he would hug everybody that he meets, and he was kind of taken aback that people didn't like his hugging and.
I think you're talking about Bob Hertzberg.
Yes.
Senator Hertzberg, and I don't know Senator Hertzberg.
Is he a hugger?
I don't know him personally, so I've never been the recipient of one of his hugs. At the same time, I come from a Latino background.
They hug, right?
We hug, we kiss, and that is very normal. Because I grew up in South America, that was sort of how I grew up. I remember when I started doing that, once I started to work in the Korean American community, I could kind of feel people going, they were not feeling, they were not comfortable. So I quickly learned Asians don't hug and don't kiss in the cheek. And but Latinos do it all the time. So I think you need to be mindful of cultural backgrounds and then what is acceptable within certain culture and then not so much on another.
Because hugging can become sexual harassment because the recipient, if she or he feels that way, right, then it becomes a sexual harassment situation, or even kissing, right, on the cheek, if the recipient doesn't like it.
I think harassment in a legal sense, it needs to be sort of repeated or
not just a one-time thing.
Or crosses certain threshold where it's not normal.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're grabbing somebody's private parts,
yeah, like genitals, or seems like some people did that,
that could be the first time, and that is an absolutely no.
No, yeah, that's crazy.
But hugging, if by the second time I were to say, Michael, don't hug me anymore, then you already know and you continue, then it becomes harassment. Yes.
It's a very touchy subject,
I don't think we've seen the end of it. I think this is going to continue, not only in politics, but I think it's going to continue in Hollywood. More people are coming out, more people are getting
Thurman came out recently,
courage.
Right, about Harvey Weinstein.
In the Asian community, I see it as we keep things personal, and then I think it probably goes on more, if not as much as it does in mainstream America. But I think Asians tend to sort of hide those things, and then there's a sense of shame actually even coming out and then saying, I was harassed, or my boss is doing that, or because I think we put a lot of it on us.
Exactly,
yeah.
So we see some candidates or politicians, elected officials, who get accused just once, and they just let go of their, they kind of give up their position or something like that. Do you think, do you think that that is a controversial thing, or do you think that's the right way to go, or what is your thought on that? Because when I see that, I'm sometimes wondering, definitely I think the females has to be protected, the victims has to be protected.
And males.
And males
yeah,
too.
Harassment. Yeah. I think harassment can go both ways.
I'm wondering, how can we know whether they're falsely accused? You know what I'm saying? We just don't know because we weren't there, right?
I commend those legislatures or leaders that kind of take it upon themselves to resign. Because once the accusers do come forward, people have the courage to acknowledge that what they did was wrong, and then they step off on their own, then I commend those people. The ones who are wrongly accused, I think you do have to let the system, the process go through, and then either vindicate the accused or validate the accuser. So if somebody's denying it, I think you have to be given that opportunity.
That's a very good point. Yeah. No arguing here. So the Me Too campaign, Time's Up campaign, it's going to probably keep on going. Okay, finally, let's talk about the big game.
Yes,
that
Eagles.
Happened last Sunday night, Super Bowl 52. The Eagles are having a huge victory parade as we speak. What was your takeaway from this year's Super Bowl?
I remember on Thursday I said I picked the Eagles.
Yeah, you did. You correctly
predicted
our viewers.
Watching the game, I have to tell you I was nervous because we're talking about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. There is no doubt that they are a team that they were dominating for almost 2 decades now. At the same time, when I started watching the game, I realized Eagles wanted it a lot more. As a team, they were operating in all cylinders. I did not see one Eagle player who was trying to showboat. He was not there because he wanted to make a splash. Yeah. Everybody was working in unison.
You can know that from little turnovers. They didn't have a lot of turnovers, right?
I thought, remember what I said? Defense wins championships.
You did.
There was no really defense.
Yeah, it was pretty much an offense.
It was an offensive battle. I thought Brady would get sacked, and then he did get sacked at the very end.
Very end, and that was the game changer.
Right. But I thought there would be at least 2-3 times where they would just rush him, and then he would get sacked. I think I have to give credit to Eagles for operating as a team. New England, I think what happened is that they've been there enough times, and I only saw 3 players kind of stepping up to the plate. The quarterback, Gronkowski, and Amendola. and then everybody else, their name was not really mentioned. Harrison, who was acquired from the Steelers, he did a pretty good job rushing. But besides him, I really didn't. And, as a viewer on television, it's very difficult to see the whole picture. But at least what they show on TV, to me, it was not a team, but it was a individual effort to really try to win the game rather than a team together. So Eagles deserves it because they were in sync. At the same time, the last Hail Mary that Brady threw, I thought they were going to catch
you
that.
Thought so?
Oh yeah,
It was in that direction to Gronkowski, right? So
if he didn't have 6 players around him, he was the tallest too.
Right,
and then I don't know if I saw it on instant replay time and time and time. Even I slowed it down to see like how close he came, and it's a matter of split second that he could have gotten. Then they would have won again.
You're right.
Yeah.
My takeaway was whatever Super Bowl game that New England Patriots is involved in, it's an exciting game. If you see their win or loss games, it's less than 4-point difference, I think, until this year's game. If you remember the New England Patriots versus the New York Giants, remember the perfect season that they were aiming for, but they lost in the final game.
The Giants are the only team they haven't been able to beat.
Eli Manning, beat Tom Brady twice.
Yes.
Right? So, whenever New England is there, I know that it's going to be a great game. I watched all the way, first half, first quarter, second quarter, but in the middle of halftime show, my kids wanted to go to Toys R Us, so I had to stop by there. I went there, it was completely empty. There was nobody there. The customer service
Good
person,
dad.
did the cashier for me. So I went there, and then I came back. It was in the middle of fourth quarter. The points were really tight, and it was when Tom Brady was about to make his last drive, And we saw this movie so many times, right?
Oh, yes.
He's a comeback, he's a comeback hit. Every time, in New England, he had so many winning Super Bowl drives. I thought it would be the same thing all over again. But somehow I kind of felt, Eagles had the edge because Nick Foles didn't look like a backup quarterback. He was very poised and he was calm. It's like, it was just it wasn't a huge deal. I didn't see him being nervous. You didn't feel that from his play. Like you would feel that from like Peyton Manning before in the Super Bowls that he's a little bit, rusty. But from Nick Foles, I didn't feel that, and I felt like it was kind of like a deja vu of what Tom Brady did back in was it 2001 or when he was a backup quarterback for Drew Bledsoe. Was it 2001 or 22?
Around
2001,
there.
I think around that time. Yeah. So he took over and he won Super Bowl and he created the New England Patriots dynasty with Bill Belichick, right? I don't know whether Nick Foles would make a
He's not staying. He's a free agent.
Yeah, yes. Philadelphia Eagles. But I think it was a great story. It's always great to see a underdog, win the championship.
Absolutely.
First time in 60 years, and it was because back in 2003, I think Eagles. It was Donovan McNabb at that time, right?
Correct.
Eagles versus Patriots, and Patriots beat the Eagles by 3 points, I think, at that time. So I think this was kind of a sweet revenge for the Eagles fans.
Yeah, it only took about 14 years.
Yeah, it only took about 14 years. And yeah, they were all just in sync, like you said. They hit, all cylinders. I think in the Patriots side, the one play they did this trick play where Brady could have catch the ball.
That's where everything changed.
Yeah, he missed that ball.
Yes.
It was pretty much. He was wide open because nobody expected him to catch the ball, and he was wide open. He could have done it, but he couldn't. And I think he made some short passes that kind of just died. In the first half there were some easy passes and some ridiculous pass plays where it just where you usually don't see from Tom Brady. And I was kind of surprised that he made those kind of
I think offensively, both teams were pretty aggressive.
Exactly.
You do also have to give credit to the coach, where he went on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 in like 2 separate occasions, or if not more. And one of the things he said on the interview is that he said that no matter what the score was going to be, he wasn't going to let go of the pedal until the end of the game.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah, because when New England was up, and then there was about 6.5 minutes left, they were 4th and 1 in their own 40. And I say 9 out of 10 coaches would have just said, punt it, we still have 6.5 minutes, and then we can get the ball back. He's like, no, we're going for it.
Yeah. I missed that part.
And
I had to go to Express.
and that's when I said, wow, this guy is not leaving anything behind. So it was a great game. I wish that every Super Bowl was this exciting. I hate to watch games where the game ends, 6-9, 6-10.
Oh yeah, the defensive games are kind of, it could be exciting just for, really the maniacs, so the football maniacs really love those kind of defensive games, but most people want to see a lot of scores on the scoreboard. And it was a great game. It was great until the end, when the Hail Mary. I thought Brady had a chance because he made so many of those last plays, but somehow Eagles, they did their job. They blocked it. They blocked, in the end zone, and that's when the game was over. And what did you think about Tom Brady not shaking hands with Nick Foles after the game?
I didn't know that, but at least his wife was gracious enough to congratulate. But
was that really a congratulation? She said, Phil Eagles didn't win for 1,000,000 years. Isn't that kind of a jab?
I think the other thing is that as she was walking through, she congratulated all the players that she saw. I thought that was a class act. When it comes to football, I do have to say, I watched it with my friends, and they're all Korean Americans.
Okay.
And we're probably one of the few exceptions of Korean Americans that kind of watch football with the intensity that we're watching. But this is sort of a good conversation and something that you got to know if you want to be mainstream, American society. And I do encourage people, not only football, but baseball and basketball. Because a lot of times when you are interacting with your coworkers, especially Super Bowl Monday, I don't know if you knew this, but 14 million people call out on
6 day, right?
Yeah, Super Bowl. But even on Tuesday, I'm still at work talking about football. And a lot of times I feel that Korean Americans cannot engage.
Miss out on that.
Yeah, and then when you do that, then everybody else is like, he's not from here, so he doesn't really understand the sort of what Americans do on Super Bowl Sunday. So I think I encourage people to participate in also sports or at least the viewing of sports, because not only you learn or you enjoy the game, but you learn a lot about the culture and to me, Super Bowl Sunday is a very, very sacred day.
Holiday for you.
Yes,
right? Yeah, and that's a very good point. It is important. You're talking about social currency. It can be social currency. People can engage. I can make friends even when I go somewhere business trip, and the person beside me, he was a huge sports fan, and we just talked about sports all the way through. And you're right. Even with your coworkers, I think NFL could be that. NFL was that unique game where people could talk a lot about, about the aftermath of it and all that. More so than baseball, I would say. Baseball, there's too many games, 162 games in 181 days. But, football, it's like 1 week. It's an event, right? So you're right. And Super Bowl, I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch any single NFL game throughout this season. I was turned off by the kneeling thing. It was too political, because I thought sports should be that sacred thing where people should be united. Whether, our politics aside, that's when, we don't want to even think about politics, and we just want to enjoy the game. But once you do those kneelings, it becomes too political, and you make them be at least subconsciously, thinking about what's going on in the world when you don't want to think about it. So I thought that was a turn off. But Super Bowl, I didn't want to miss it. I wanted, and I had to talk about it with you, so I wanted to be prepared. But it was a great game. I really enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it thoroughly, and it's up there. I thought the best Super Bowl game ever was when Eli Manning, the New York Giants, took away New England Patriots' perfect game. I thought that was an amazing game. But this is also up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we go, we would like to remind our viewers to participate in the upcoming California election. Is there any last words that you want to say to our viewers?
Extremely important election, June 5th. As I'm talking to people about my own campaign, I realized that people don't even know that there is an election on June 5th. The governor is going to be elected. The lieutenant governor is going to be elected. All the senators are going to be elected. So it is extremely important that everybody participates. You have plenty of time to register and make your voices heard, because I think if you don't vote, you really cannot have an opinion about politics or what's going on, because you did not really participate. So I encourage you to everybody to register and vote this June 5th.
It is our civic duty, like you said. We all have to be, participate in the election, or we have no say. We can't complain about it, right?
If you want changes, or if you want to keep things the way they are, then you have to participate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, things will change without you being a part of it.
You're right.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, that's it for us today. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.